Okay, welcome to Pro Mindset Podcast today. This is your host, Craig Domann. I've got a special guest, somebody I've known for a long time, Tony Veland. Tony, welcome to Pro Mindset.
I appreciate it, brother. I didn't know you stepped into the podcast world. How's it going?
It's going pretty good, man. I think this is like 125 or something like that, and I've had a few Husker guys on, and Woo
awesome.
was on. It hasn't posted yet, but he was on.
Okay.
But so Tony is a former Nebraska Cornhusker black shirt, former Denver Bronco Super Bowl champion. Tony's one of the very few people on the planet, and I would say there's probably less than a couple hundred people, maybe less, I don't know, maybe it's less than that, maybe it's more, that have actually won a national championship. He won a couple of them, and won a Super Bowl. So,
Correct.
Tony, kind of share with everybody your story that, some people may know you, some people may be never heard of you. Kind of give everybody an overview of who Tony Veland is.
Oh, do you want me to go back to the beginning? Omaha kid, Nebraska kid, and ended up, being a decent athlete. Went to a high school called Benson High School. Did well there, got recruited by Nebraska, went down to Nebraska, and we were there at kind of our pinnacle. We had a great time.
Kinda.
You know what I mean.
Until there's another one. It is the one.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It's been a long time. People are hurting, that's for sure. But there with the amazing Coach Osborne, they had an amazing time. Got a chance to play for 3 national championships, winning 2. In 94 and 95. Fortunate enough to have gotten drafted to the Broncos, 6th round in 1996, played for them for 2 years, Super Bowl championship in my second year, and then played 1 year in Carolina. And then ended up coming back home and getting into the world of finance, where I did financial advising for about 15 years. And then for the last year, I've actually been in the world of community building. I work for an organization called the AIM Institute, and we are trying to provide tech opportunities for underserved populations. So just trying to find a way to give back, and, always like to use my platform to be able to open doors to be able to do that.
And you also still coach and do some things like that. So share what you're doing in that arena.
Yeah, so I did some coaching in the past. I used to coach semi-pro football with the Omaha Beef. I did that for about 8 or 9 years. And then I coached high school ball, Concordia High School, and then also Northwest High School here in Omaha. And I did that for 4 years. And the way I get my football fix now is myself, along with a number of other individuals and who've been in the football background. We do some stuff with a group called Warren Academy. And so we do position-specific training for individuals who are trying to go to the next level in football. And we've been doing that roughly about 10, 12 years, if I'm not mistaken. And that is actually going really well. We've, had, I can't tell you how many, D1, guys we got scholarships. We've had, I think, 3 individuals that actually played in the NFL so far. We've had a couple of national championships. So we're at that point where, people are really starting to pay attention. Coaches are really starting to pay attention, and it's really paying off for the kids who generally don't get as much exposure if they, are in smaller schools. So that's one of the reasons why we do that as well.
Well, Tony, I want to ask you about Nebraska. I want to ask you about Coach Osborne and all that type of stuff. But what's popping in my head is a handful of years ago, you were going to come out to our football camp in Colorado Springs, and you couldn't make it. And it was because you got shot.
Oh, wow.
So I just want you to, how many people, I've never had, to my knowledge, I've never had anybody on my podcast that's been shot.
That's probably a good thing, isn't it?
That is a good thing. So I like watching NCIS and all those kind of shows. So I'm seeing that kind of stuff all the time. But to have a real person on the show that's been shot, and it wasn't a good thing. I mean, it wasn't a good thing. But describe what happened. I mean, it was total innocent thing on your part. You were at the gym, but just
no, it was just a kind of a crazy situation. It was just a random day. I had finished working out, and I was, getting ready to go visit a friend. That person wasn't home yet, so I wanted to grab a bite to eat. I grabbed some food. I was sitting in the parking lot of my old school, eating my food, finished my food, went to the trash can to put my food away or to throw my food away. And as soon as I got back in my truck to close the door, my window exploded. And so everything gets slow motion at that particular time. The window explodes. I hear boom, 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 boom. I feel something really hard in my shoulder. Now, mind you, I don't know what's going on at this particular time. It's just because it's going so fast, but I still feel something really hard in my shoulder. And, I'm hearing these sounds, and then I look up, and it's probably about 100 feet away in the street, but I can see somebody that is in a car, and they're aiming. And so, it's just this really crazy scenario because I've never been involved in anything that would warrant somebody taking that type of action towards me. Never been in gangs. I don't, I get along pretty much with everyone. So as this is happening, part of my mind is like, how in the hell has this happened? Like this is crazy. There should be no reason somebody's shooting at me. But at the same time, common sense kicks in too, and common sense is like, you might want to move, duck, bob,
Yeah, get out of there, baby.
Do something, right? So I, kind of come to, and I duck down, I start the car, and I try to drive off. I drive to the right, and they're in the street, and they end up going that way. When I turn back to the left, and I'm driving home, and at that time is, it's happening so fast. I don't really even have time to be, scared. I just react. And then as I'm driving home, I realize, okay, they shot my tires out too. And so, I'm driving, and, I can't go fast. So if they turn around and they try to come get me, like this could be it for me. So that's when I really started to get scared. But, I'm able to drive, and at the same time, I'm able to, call the ambulance while I'm driving home. And I was probably about a mile away from where I actually live. So I get back to my house, and I get out. I park in front of my place. I get out, and I'm getting ready to walk up the street. And then I look at the top of my hill, and there's a car sitting there, and it's just parked. So now I'm, super scared. I'm thinking, okay, they followed me. They're, I feel like I'm in a, Menace to Society or Boys in the Hood movie or something like that, where this car's getting ready to come down. But luckily, that wasn't them. The car just drove by. I got into the house, and the ambulance ends up coming in. They end up taking care of me. I end up having surgery on my shoulder. The bullet is actually still, lodged in here, and I was extremely, extremely lucky. The bullet hit off of my the ball and socket joint. It bounced off a rib that was in front of my heart and lodged itself up, behind my collarbone. And they weren't able to get it because there's so many blood vessels in there. But so it's still in there today. But if it doesn't hit off of that rib, I'm not here. And if any of those other bullets other than that first one hit me, I'm not here. So it was a really, really crazy situation. They never found the individual, and to be completely honest with you, I don't think the officers put in much work to find that person anyway. I think it was just a case of mistaken identity. There would be no reason for somebody to do something like that to me. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough, and I'll be honest, for about a week, about a month after that, I was ready to wash my hands of North Omaha. I was ready to be like, okay, I'm not living here anymore. I'm going to move out west. In my mind, it was like, how could something like that happen to me when I've, always tried to do the right thing, always, tried to give back, always try to set good examples. And this is what happens, in my own community, and so that was really difficult. But luckily for me, I came back to my senses, and I realized that, even though something like this happened, me leaving wasn't going to help solve the problem, and so, I wanted to make sure that I remained true to myself. And I've always been about giving back to community. I've always been about, the youth. I wanted to show them that there's better ways. And so about 3 months after that, I ended up joining the Teammates Mentoring Organization, to where now I mentor kids and try to make sure that they don't take that route. And I don't know whatever happened to that guy who ended up, shooting me. Hopefully, he changed his life, or, something positive happened, after that. I don't hold any grudges anymore, but it was a crazy, crazy, crazy scenario. And I'm just glad I'm still here to be able to tell it.
All right, Tony. So when something like that happens, and nothing like that's ever happened to me, by the way, so I can't really identify with it. but I can, as you were describing it, and I know you, and I know, you're, as good a dude as there is. And so it had to be mistaken identity, but you still had to have those questions in your mind, like, why me? God, why? What's the purpose? So now that it's been a minute,
Mm-hmm.
when you look back, what good came out of that bad situation? What did you change in your life? How did you impact people differently? How did you live your day differently? How have you changed your life in a positive way because of that?
Well, and I think the best good that came out of, well, I think there was two things that came out of it. Number one, I decided to, get more involved. I had talked about mentoring in the past, and it always been important for me to do something with kids, but it's always been just, kind of speaking to them randomly, and maybe coaching here and there, but not really getting involved in the kid's life. And so, this really made me want to, be more involved and just to kind of make sure that if there are signs that somebody might be going on the wrong path, that, I can be there to kind of help with that. So there's that side of it. Number two, and I think a bigger thing was just making sure that this circumstance or this situation that happened to me in life didn't change who I was as a core person. It didn't change the core of who I am, right? Because I'm always going to be that person who's good natured and gives a damn about people and cares, as opposed to being angry, being bitter, putting my head in the sand and not helping to solve those type of problems. So that was, those were the two things for me that I got from it, and it also just kind of reminded me, in essence, obviously all the injuries that I went through with Nebraska, and to kind of be able to overcome that, to get those championships and to get those successes. If I would have quit at that particular time, I wouldn't have experienced those successes. I think this was kind of the similar scenario. You go through something hard, and you can either bury yourself in the sand or go hide in the house, or you can face it and say, I went through something and I got through that, and now I have a testimony to be able to share with other people. I have an experience that I can help people deal with moving forward, and I have a lot more empty now than I had in the past.
Well, and just from the outside looking in, being a champion and also being shot and being able to be successful, in everybody's eyes, because you recovered from being shot, and you have this history of overcoming injuries, being a champion. People are going to listen to you more.
Right.
People
Right.
care more what you have to say.
Right.
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 And so you got to be really careful what you say, because people are going to be
Well,
listening.
no, that's true. That is true. That is definitely true. But that platform has always been there, right? I mean, with the sports, So, and especially being here in Nebraska, where Nebraska football is kind of everything, right? Even though we're not winning, it's still kind of everything. And so, I've always prided myself on being able to use that platform to give a good message, whether that's doing good in school, whether it's overcoming adversity, whether it's leadership thing, whether it's hanging with the right people, all these type of things that kids need to hear, and a lot of times they're more willing to hear it from somebody with that kind of sports background. So I like to be able to utilize that for that, and it's worked well.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's go back to Nebraska days.
Yeah.
And you came in as a highly touted quarterback, thinking you were going to be the next, wishbone quarterback for Nebraska.
Yeah.
And that didn't work out, but you ended up being a, all conference, all world safety.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn? What have you carried with you for the last 25 plus years that you learned from Coach Osborne during those championship years?
What have I carried? Well, I'll tell you, I learned a lot from Coach, and one of the big takeaways I had from just being in this organization is that family is everything, right? I mean, we come in and we all have these expectations of being world beaters and spotlight all on me. I think one of the things that was really great about being in this organization was that he tried to let you know that this is about a team. This is about a family. This can't be you first. If this is you first, then all those goals that we're trying to accomplish, it's going to be really hard to do that. And so he was a master at having everybody really buy into the vision, especially considering, when we went there, Nebraska was already a machine. They were already, 11-1, for probably 10-2, 11-1, for probably 10 years prior, right? So, to be able to get a number of guys to come in and say, and all have that mindset to say, that's not enough. That's not enough. He had that type of influence and that family, atmosphere, that culture that he had built was really ingrained in all of us that allowed us to be able to do that. And so I will forever be eternally grateful for him. He is really, besides my father, probably one of the, I don't think I respect a man more than him. That's for sure. That being said, some of the other things I learned is just kind of trust the process, right? Trust the process. You got to put in the work. You got to be, about your team. The success, in my opinion, is not, it hardly ever happens on accident, right? I mean, you've got to kind of put yourself in a situation to be successful when, taking information from Coach Osborne, the coach is taking information from you, taking information from other mentors, adding that to a work ethic and kind of doing the right thing and being a leader allowed me to, go to the next level. And so that's something that I continue to use, and even in business today, right? I don't try to do hardly anything by myself. I'm always trying to, two heads are always better than one. But I'm always trying to make sure that work ethic is there, and that's not just about me. If it's just about me, it's not big enough. You know what I mean? But when it's about other people, then sky's the limit, and that's just kind of what happened with us when we were at Nebraska.
Okay, so let's go back to Tony Veland. If I'm not mistaken, did you wear number 9? Is that was your
jersey? I did wear number 9, dude. Really, you're killing me, man.
Yeah, well, dude, I'm getting old, bro. I can't remember all that stuff.
How many people you have?
I remember you. I watched you play, but man, it's been a minute. Okay,
it has been
1995, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Shoot, man. Half the people listening to this weren't even born yet. Are you kidding me? Okay. So, what happened to Tony Veland during your time in college when you went in expecting X and you came out getting Y? Kind of share with everyone what the X was and what the Y was, and then what was your growth and development from that experience?
Well, I came in wanting to be the quarterback, right? They actually wanted me just to be an athlete. They wanted me to be a defensive back right off the bat. But I had a Shrine Bowl game right before, I came in, and I actually did well in the Shrine Bowl. And so they were like, okay, well, we'll give you an opportunity. And I went in there, I think, just with the right attitude. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder just because, I felt like they had kind of their heir apparent, their favorite guy. And I knew I had some ability, and I just wanted to be able to prove that. So I went in there and I worked hard, and I knew the playbook. I was coachable. I think I did pretty much all the right things. And I was getting a look, but at that time, as I was getting a look, there were always little nagging injuries, whether it was ankle stuff or pulled muscles, or I think my first summer there, I ended up having a scope on my rotator cuff. So that had me out for a little bit. So it was all these little knick-knack things that were bothering me, but fought through all that. After my redshirt year, I have my redshirt freshman year. Tommy Frazier comes in. Tommy Frazier's the heir apparent. He's all everything. And they were just in essence supposed to somewhat give him, that particular position. But I was battling. And it came down to the last play of the last scrimmage before our first game of that year. I broke my collarbone, and I was actually going to be the starter if I'd have just not got hurt. So when that happens, Mike Grant takes over as quarterback. He's going through, and then Tommy beats him out, I think, 5 games in, if I'm not mistaken. So that year is pretty much over with. We go to the next year, spring ball. We're competing against myself, Tommy, and Brooke Behringer. We go to the fall. Tommy ends up beating us out. Me and Brooke Behringer, code number 2. Second game or third game of the season, I don't remember. We're running up. We're playing North Texas. I run an option play, come down the line, I cut up. Somebody pulls me a certain way, blow my knee. All right. So when I blow out my knee, that was kind of a huge blow because at that time, people weren't automatically coming back from knee injuries, right? You just didn't know. It was very kind of up in the air. And so I was like, well, hell, I bounced back from all this other stuff, and now I got this huge thing to deal with. Like that kind of put me in a tank, put me in a tailspin, and I'll say that wasn't a real proud time in my life because I started doing some stuff I shouldn't have done. Anyway, during this time, I ended up getting some letters from a young lady in Lexington, and they're just kind of out of the blue. I didn't know who this lady was, but I read the first one, didn't respond. She sent me another one probably about a week later. I read that, and the words in this letter, for some reason, it just resonated with me. It just, some of the stuff that she was saying was making sense, and she basically just said, God is testing you, right? Like you've gone through some injuries in the past, and I know you're going through some hard things now, but this is all in essence for you to become a stronger person. She was in essence saying, look, it's great for you to be strong in body, but you need to be strong in mind and spirit too. And God is allowing you to grow through something like this. And when she said this, it just made perfect sense. So I ended up reaching out to her, coming to find out that she had been writing Nebraska players for like 4 or 5 years before that. She wakes up at 4:00 in the morning just to write these letters, just to encourage people. And when I found out she did, I was like, this is amazing. Like I've got to connect with her. She's, this is divine intervention that she's actually, ministering to me, and it's reaching me, it's touching me when the stuff in my family, my coach wasn't really coming through. And so she, in essence, in my opinion, that was the defining point of my college career, because she allowed me to kind of turn the page, stop feeling sorry for myself, and just get back to work, get back to overcoming this injury, and get back to, trying to be that athlete that I wanted to be, once my career was done. So I got back to work, did the rehab, and next thing you know, the next year comes around and I'm in a position to play. My guy, your other client, Mike, was behind him. He ended up getting hurt. I get my opportunity, and, from then on, it just ends up working. And I go from, somebody who wants to play quarterback, wants to be the star guy, to a guy and a star guy, and knowing that I would probably never make the NFL because I'm an option quarterback, so that wasn't even a thought, to somebody who's playing defensive back, who's prototypical and makes a few plays. And now I have a chance to possibly make it to, the NFL. So, things worked out so much better than I could have ever written. I never thought I'd be playing for 3 national championships. I never thought I'd have a chance to go play into the NFL, but just, following the process, overcoming adversity, relying on those individuals around me to encourage me and give me hope and bless me. Like, things have worked out so much better than it possibly could have. So I'm just extremely happy that I was able to go through it. And I think a lot of people curse when you go through bad things. Like, I'm so happy that I did, because if I didn't, I wouldn't have experienced those championships. I wouldn't have grown into the person that I am.
Tony, the thing that sticks out to me in that story, and I didn't know that story about that woman that was writing you, is the encouragement, the hope, and the kindness of somebody you didn't even know was reaching out to you and touching you and trying to encourage you. Did you have you stayed in touch with that lady?
Oh yeah. Lady's name is Diane Yider. We've been the best of friends, for these last 25, 30 years. As a matter of fact, I went out to Lexington. This was probably about 3 months ago. Got a chance to see her and spend some time with her. So eternally grateful for what she's been in my life.
That is amazing. Wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you are a mentor, and you have a platform. You're one of those Nebraska Cornhusker black shirt legends. There's a handful of y'all from back in the 90s. What is the message that you give young kids today, and I'm talking about high school kids, that could become like you, could go to the pros, could play big time football, and maybe they got some talent, but they just don't know what it's about? They think it's easy. They think it's easier than what it really is. They haven't been through adversity yet. Maybe things going really, really smooth. But what is your message to people in that situation?
I think there's a couple things. Number one, there's no substitution for the work. I mean, regardless of, how talented they are, they're going to go to a situation where, there's going to be some people there who don't have that same talent or even more. And, so you got to be able to put in the work and don't be scared to compete. That's one of the big things I like to share with them now, especially considering, college has the whole transfer portal thing now. So it's, if I don't find a situation that's completely ideal for me, then keep looking. And I don't think that serves, a lot of kids well for future development, so don't not be scared to compete, put in the work. Also surrounding yourself with good people. Like, I think it's something that, a lot of kids have a problem with, because especially if you've grown up around, certain people, those are just your guys, right? Even if they're not, taking you in the right direction, it's hard to kind of, somewhat divorce yourself from them. And I'm not necessarily saying they need to divorce themselves, but I just think they need to kind of keep certain people at arm's length, because sometimes, those bad influences have a bigger influence on you than you rubbing off on them. And I think the last thing that, a lot of these kids want to do is, mess up their future because, I just want to hang out with a guy and get caught up in something that, they don't know how to come back from. So there's that. And then the other thing is, and this is really hard for kids to do. I learned so much more about football when I became a coach because I studied the game more. And if we can have some of these kids do that, just be all in, learn the game. Don't learn just your position. Learn the game, learn the positions that are around you, because it allows you to be so much more successful when you know what's coming, when you know the scheme, when you know what to expect. If they can do that, then they'll put themselves so much farther ahead of most of the other kids that are actually going in their position. And so those are the things I like to tell them. And then obviously, just figure out a way, because this is my background, figuring out a way to overcome and persevere. Don't feel like a victim if something bad happens to you. Don't quit just because you may have an injury or two. Don't quit because the coach gets on you. That is just life. That is just life. And if they become a quitter, if they quit now, then obviously it's easy for them to quit in the future. We don't want them to become those people, right? Become people that overcome, become people who influence, become people who will be leaders long term, and leaders, in essence, overcome things. So a couple of things, I know I've talked about a couple of things, but a lot of times when I'm talking to kids, there are those 3 or 4 things I definitely, like to share that, because I want them all to be successful.
I'm going to regurgitate back what you just shared. You said no substitute for work.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to compete. Make sure you got good people in your tribe, or in your homies need to be good people.
Yep.
Really learn the game.
Yep.
Some of these guys are so talented, they don't have to know the game in high school to still be good.
Right.
When we get to the next levels, you have to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And the last one might be the most important one, and that is when adversity strikes, how are you going to respond?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of guys do really well until they hit that hurdle of adversity, and it comes. Sometimes you get a couple of them really close together, and it's like, I think it defines you. I think of all those things, like, if you're a hard worker, that's great. If you're a competitor, that's awesome. You know your stuff. But the thing that defines you is, how do you respond to the BS? How do you respond to, it didn't work out like you were thinking it was going to work out, or the injury, or all those types of things?
Right.
Comment on that.
Well, I mean, listen, it's extremely important, because you never know how this is going to come. Right. You never know what it's going to be. It could be an injury. It could be school. It could be not getting along with your coach. It could be a family issue. We don't have any control over any of that. But if you allow that to control you, then you're allowing the circumstance to pretty much dictate your fate. Right. And I just, for me, I wasn't going to allow that to happen. I think being on social media, sometimes, things get so negative, but you can see a lot of that comes from people not, determining their own fate, but allowing their circumstances to determine, their happiness and future and all those type of things. You got to take control of that yourself. And it's easier to say that, as I'm since I'm 50 now, and I've been through a few things. When you're younger, you sometimes you think the world is against you, but that's not really the case. You have control over your life, but the easiest way to do that is to not let life control you. And so, overcoming that adversity will allow you to be able to do that.
Okay, let's talk about competing. One of the things that I find is that guys don't like to compete.
Nope.
Coaches don't even like competition. You said when you went to Nebraska, Coach Osborne, who's a Hall of Famer, all world, he knew who his guy was. And they really didn't want to have a competition. Right. And that's how football is. That's how sports are. Right. And so when you're not the handpicked person, you have a decision to make. I'm going to quit or I'm going to compete. Make it hard on the coaches.
Right.
Give them a tough decision.
Right.
I've seen 6 Power 5 quarterbacks, 4 of them starters, hit the portal in the last 48 hours.
Yeah.
They're all just bouncing.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, maybe I can get more money, more something, less of something.
Yeah. And, obviously it's, the environment now is different, right? Because, the transfer portal, you can leave and not necessarily get penalized, but then there's also nil money to consider, right? So, those guys who have gotten some type of experience, they may be living to search that out. But that is very few and far in between. Like if you take 10 guys that go to the portal, I think you're probably going to have 1 or 2 that end up in a better situation. The other one is going to end up in the same situation or a worse situation because now you're going to a place where you don't know anybody. You got to relearn the playbook. You got to figure out a way to fit into the system. And just because you go to somewhere else doesn't mean they're not going to have talent too. Talent is everywhere. So you can't just, run from a situation just because it's not ideal. Like I think that is the biggest thing for me that I don't like about the transfer portal. If you don't have that, it makes you fight. It makes you compete. It makes you find a way to, if I want to be on that team, I got to figure out how to do it. If that means working hard, that means working hard. If it means learning more about my playbook, it means learning more about the playbook. You got to be able to dive deep and say, hey, is this about, me running away to find something easier? Or do I have that inner strength to make that thing happen where I'm at? And so, for me personally, I always thrived on competition. When I went to Nebraska, I knew that, we had some guys who were really, really good. But inside, even though I'm not, braggadocious, I have a little bit of ego and I felt like I was a good athlete. For me, I was like, this would be awesome if I could come to a team that's already 11-1, already playing for conference championships every single year, has crazy talent everywhere. Just think about the badge of honor to say, hey, I broke in there. I became a starter. I made that team better. That was feeling enough for me. Some people don't necessarily have that in them, but I think that's something they need to, pretty much build because that's the type of attitude that you need to take in any place you go to. You want to be able to come in, insert yourself, and make that place better, regardless of who's there. And so I think if people, learn how to really have that mentality, it'll take them really far in life.
I think players today sometimes overestimate their value. And so when they hit the portal, they're thinking they're going to get more than they're going to get. And some of them are secretly hoping that the team they're with, the school they're with, is going to come and give them a truckload of money and say, hey, stay.
Right.
And they don't. And then half the guys that go in, I think it was like 73% last year, they don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Nobody wants you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So 7 out of 10 chance, nobody wants you.
Right.
So it's why won't you just stay where you're at? Yes.
Harsh reality.
Yeah. So
the grass is not greener. You're looking at a different yard. The yard you're going to is probably brown. It's kind of is what it is, right?
It's probably worse. Well, something that's very interesting about the portal is it allows you, when things are not going your way, just to hit the eject button. Yeah. When in life, whether you get married, whether you're working for a company, you have your own company, things you have a bad quarter, a bad week, bad year, whatever it might be. You just can't get out.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the thing. It's not realistic. I mean, it's no, don't get me wrong. I know there are some positives in the fact that, coaches can now find somebody in the portal that might be a little bit more experienced and not necessarily have to worry about just young talent. Now, there's that. But at the same time, I feel like the downsides are kind of what we're talking about. Kids don't have to commit. They don't learn to develop. They don't learn toughness. They don't learn grit. They don't learn to overcome. Because there's always that door, right? So if kids are going through that, I would hope, if they're making those changes, that they finally realize, okay, trying to find a better option is not necessarily the case. Maybe working through it and trying to figure out how to make it work around Matt is going to be a better scenario, because it'll help them long term in other areas of their life, not just football.
Absolutely. Now let's flip it to the coaches' side.
Mhm.
This is amazing for the coaches. This is like better than pro football. They don't have 3-year contracts. They got 1-year contracts. You can get people everywhere. You can go recruit people off other rosters illegally because people are doing it. You can
Right.
go, cherry pick guys from FCS. If you're a Power 5 school, you can go get a low D1 FCS kid that is good enough to play at your place.
Right.
And you can flip your roster like Dion did. Jeff Brom did it in Louisville, 37 guys in 1 year.
Right. That is true, which is great. But there's also a flip side to that as well, right? That means if you find somebody, they have to come in and they have to be productive right off the bat. Like that, the development piece for a lot of that is probably not as much there, right? Back in the day, you bring somebody in as a freshman or a sophomore, they're going to be there for at least 3 or 4 years. You've got time to develop, and you got time to learn chemistry. You got time to learn the playbook, all those type of things, and you've got some time to make it all work. We don't have that now. You know what I'm saying? You don't have that, quite as much, and so I think that also puts coaches, kind of on the hot seat a little bit quicker, because there is a talent out there, and so their higher ups are like, okay, we'll go find somebody and be successful right now. So there is a flip side to that, and the other side is that also hurts, some of the incoming freshmen, right? Because now those coaches aren't necessarily looking for them to, come in and contribute right away, because I'm going to take a chance on a guy who doesn't have any college experience, as opposed to somebody who has maybe 2 or 3 years and may be able to be productive right off the bat. So it is kind of a catch-22. I know it creates, some great opportunities for some people, but all in all, in my opinion, I think it's more negative, more bad than good.
I think it is more negative. I think you talk about the hot seat for the coaches, the seat's getting hotter sooner for every coach.
Yeah.
Because every administration and pro, AD and everybody's going, hey, look what so-and-so did in 1 year. Why you need 4 or 5 years to do it?
Exactly.
And then the high school kids, instead of getting 25 scholarships, they're getting roughly around 10. So I don't know what Nebraska did last year, maybe more than that, but it's like the average is roughly around 10. So these high school kids now are looking for prep schools, JUCOs. They got to go to FCS.
Right.
It's changed the whole landscape of college football.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard.
All right, let's move over to Lincoln, Nebraska.
Lincoln, yes.
2023.
Yes.
Missed a bowl game. Could have won 8, 9 games. A lot of positive stuff going. Maybe hit that portal, baby. Go get about 3 quarterbacks and see which one can play. It looked like the quarterback play was the deficiency this year in terms of.
Oh, it was. It was.
Was it? Yeah.
And it's so crazy, because like I like Rule. I like what he's doing from a coaching perspective. But to me, the big downfall is, you have a pretty good quarterback in Casey Thompson last year, who's not super athletic, but he can throw and he makes throws, and he was good. And you bring in a quarterback for him that already has a bad turnover history. So I didn't really understand why he made that particular move. I get it. Sims is really athletic. You want to have a mobile quarterback to be able to, do the dual threat thing, which makes sense, because it obviously, causes problems for a lot of defenses. But how do you bring in somebody that has that type of history? Athletic ability means nothing when you don't have the ball, and so
it's on the ground.
It just didn't make any sense, and so to bring him in, Give I understand it. You want to take a chance. It is what it is. But I just think it was a bad decision. And then you have Harburg, excuse me, who comes in, and he's doing what he can. But I just don't know if, and I don't want to necessarily blame on the coaches. I don't know if it's they're not developing the quarterbacks enough to read better or whatever the case may be. But the turnover bug has just been killing us all year. It's just bad, just really bad. And then end of the season, you bring in Purdy, who, to be honest, Purdy didn't look bad. Purdy was probably a little bit more athletic than they thought, made some plays. I know this last game against Iowa, you threw the pick at the end of the game. I'm not holding that much to him on that particular one because he just doesn't have a lot of experience and probably should have been throwing the ball to the sideline. He's a young kid. He's going to make those type of mistakes. But yeah, offenses go as your team goes as your quarterback goes, right? So if we're not trying to find another quarterback next year, then somebody will probably be on the hot seat. But beyond that, I think we've got some good things coming. I think our defense was really good, especially considering with Tony White being his first year to have a unit gel that fast and be that good that quick has been amazing. A lot of those guys are coming back next year, so they got a chance to be successful again next year. If we could just get that offense right, then we might be okay.
Well, from what I hear, people really like Rule. They like the culture.
Yeah.
So that's good for the players that might be thinking about doing what that linebacker did that went to Michigan last year.
Yeah.
You can't afford to lose your best players. So Nebraska's got to hold on to the best guys.
Yep.
And then they got to fix that offense. They got to fix they got to bring in a quarterback that's a dude. They got to make sure their offensive line can do what it needs to do. And I think if they do that, and here's the thing, like I remember Ron Wolf did this with the Green Bay Packers one year. He's like, man, we need a corner. He drafted a corner with the first rounder, the second rounder, and the third rounder. And the media was like, why are you wasting all these picks? Because I need to find somebody. And then, the Washington used to be Redskins. They drafted RG3 and Kirk Cousins 1 and 2. It's like, that's what Rule needs to do. He needs to go in and go, okay, I'm going to go sign, a lot of quarterbacks, some portal guys. I'm going to go get some whatever other positions they need and see what shakes down. Because it's like, you can't have the whole program depend on a kid that didn't show he could do it.
Right. And plus, this is your main guy. Like, this isn't necessarily a wide receiver or a running back where there's a million of those out there. This is the guy. This is the QB, and so you've got to have some decent options, especially ones who are going to take care of the ball. So I'm sure they're probably on the hopper right now, calling people, trying to make something happen, and I have faith. I don't think it's going to be a situation that will kind of linger like Riley and Frost kind of regime did. I think having that strong defense will allow us to be able to do some things, and we just get somebody to take care of the ball. Just that simple. If we take care of the ball, we're winning 9 games. That's just take care of the ball. So, I think we're going to go in the right direction, but I'll be interested to see who we come up with as far as a QB.
All right, Tony. Let me ask you this. If you were a college football coach today, let's say you were at Nebraska, just like, one of your former teammates went over there and didn't do very well. What would you do that maybe nobody's done since Osborne's been coach? Or maybe they have. But what would be your culture? What would be your philosophy? What would be your strategy in recruiting in terms of portal versus high school, Nebraska kids versus Florida kids or, California kids?
That's a difficult question, to be honest, because I think the portal creates such a different environment now, right? I'm used to my time where, because bottom line, I'm going to try to fill up my backyard first. I'm going to try to make sure that the kids in Nebraska understand that I want any really good kid out of Nebraska coming to Nebraska, right? I don't want to lose any of that talent. So that's going to be my first order of business is making sure that I'm seen in front of all the high school here, and I'm talking to, all the groups that are actually like the Warren Academies and those groups who are training kids. So I don't lose any of that talent, number one. And then, beyond that, I mean, we gotta do whatever we can to make sure we are, attractive to those kids in the portal, right? So, but again, I think it's different because the portal is different from having like the walk-on program be strong and developing kids and that who really truly believe, fully in Nebraska and are committed to stay there 4 years because there's always that option to go. So I think that is really hard, question to answer. But in my opinion, some of the things that Rule is doing to build up culture and do all these positive things and putting his face out there to all these schools in Nebraska, I think he's doing the things that are going to allow us to be able to sew up our own backyard and not worry about kids leaving. But now we just got to make sure that, we win the 6 or 7 or 8 games that now when I call in a recruit, I can say, listen, we won 7 games. We're like 2 players away. You could be that player for me. It's hard to say that when I'm winning 3 and 4 games, right? Because kids just want to win now. They automatically want to win. And the benefit of being in Nebraska is obviously we have a huge alumni support. We have great facilities. We just built a $100 million something. We've got even more enhancements coming to the stadium. So we've got some great things coming from that side. But, again, it's about, what's that experience is going to be. And then making sure that people know that we've got the resources that, kids like and that will allow them to be successful. We've got, people who've been in the NFL, we've got, Neil here, we've got all those things. So you got to highlight some of those things. But for me, it's really the important thing is sewing up your backyard and making sure that people are really, really supporting your program from home.
Amen. Tony, anything you want to add?
Well, here's the deal. I haven't been invited back to the golf tournament in I don't know how many years. So what's the deal? We're kicking all these old guys to the curb now? Is that the deal?
Are you ready for 2024?
I'm just saying, like, what's the deal? Come on now. No, but I'm glad to see that you're doing the podcast, man. I've always had, a lot of respect for you, brother, as my agent, because first and foremost, you were always a great guy, great integrity, high character, and all this type of things. So I'm glad you're able to give back and reach back to the players who've gone through things and pull out the positive and be able to inspire the next generation. So keep doing what you're doing, man. It's all love.
I appreciate it, Tony. Appreciate you being on Pro Mindset. Hang tight for a second.